What's up, folks? Casual Dad here with another quick update on Warhammer Combat Cards. We have a lot to cover because it's a very busy week, so I'm going to dive right into this and cover a couple of things I've already talked about, but mostly touch on the balance changes for this specific season. I'm going to talk about the rewards for this Battle Pass, and we're going to talk about some of the events going on too. I honestly don't remember so many game companies being quite this into Halloween, but it's a great opportunity to really lean into kind of fun, quirky events that don't fit with the rest of the year. So, of course, I keep referencing Halloween. We've got some special events coming up for Halloween. So, for starters, you're actually going to get some themed battle packs. And these are a little bit funny with the symbol versus the countdown. Like this big golden one is a 3 hour pack. And this is also a 3 hour pack. And some of these, well, let's actually see where these come in, because that is the skull pack symbols that'll come up here. But so we have some unique kind of campaign modifiers. We have some brand new stuff that's interesting with tokens, which is pretty cool. And one of the things that came out with Supreme Commander Vol, followed by Supreme Commander Gosar, was that the developers added the feature of tokens, where you can actually have token cards. And we've seen that both as tokens in game effects, like on Morven Vol, and we've seen that as token cards, as with Gosar. So we'll just go into that a bit. Trick or treat. So in the campaigns, in the curated campaigns, the first of which is open now, if you haven't seen it already, it's curated by Play on Tabletop, and it is extremely challenging. But one of the things that I really love about it is it has the very much trick or treat thing going on, where you get some free cards added to your deck, and they either are treats, where they're a 5 point or a 5 health cherub that gives all of your cards Medicae, the max level campaign, or they're a trick, which is a 5 point Nurgle cherub that when it's destroyed has a death blow that heals your opponent's cards. And it really sucks when you have to play those in game. So it's a cool mechanic. Most of the time in the campaign, I've seen all of them be either tricks or treats. But a couple times here now, I've seen them mixed, where some are tricks and some are treats. So that's cool. And that's the unexpected reinforcements. There we go. Cherubs will heal your troops, and Nurglings will heal your opponent. And it is kind of cool just to see the gimmicky death blow, the green death blow that heals your opponents. That's wild. I was wondering when I first saw it if I could deploy it on my opponent's board and get it myself, but no, you play it on your board, it heals your opponent, so it's bad. Don't do it. Although they do have a pretty decent melee attack, so if timed correctly, they can actually take out opposing cards too. And then we have the new chests. So we looked at those symbols in the top, the skull pack that I mentioned. There's the golden ones, and then the kind of infested Nurgly ones with one eye. And the treat chests give you 5x rewards, so they're 5x packs, and the trick chests give you only 2x rewards. And the one trick chest I've opened so far also has Nurgle themed offerings. So I actually got like 5 copies of Nurglings, which I'm not too upset about. That was pretty great. So I thought it was actually a good one, and then suddenly realized that there are tricks and treats. So I really enjoyed leaning into that mechanic. So this again is the current campaign, the Play on Tabletop Halloween 1. Again, very challenging. And this is the one with that trick or treat mechanic we've seen so far. We're gonna see where you play as Tyranids, and I think that you actually end up, you get to be the Horde mode, which is interesting. And the Halloween 2 is going to be a brutal siege, and these we still have surprises. We'll see what these end up being, but they've been fun so far. It looks like they still will have the trick-or-treat mechanic in that Halloween 2, but we'll see. We'll see what's different there. This is one I'm especially interested in, this Horde mode where you get to play as the Horde. Excited to try that. And that, I believe, will start tomorrow, or probably today when I post this. Now we're going to go ahead and run through the balance changes. And I'm going to look at the rewards too, but I wanted to go ahead and highlight that this Battle Pass has some really good stuff. We've got 3 legendaries, and you actually get a level 2 Stompa in there, which is pretty solid. And then some of these epics, of course, and then a bunch of these commons with some more stuff as well. And I personally really liked the card back and the cosmetics. There's some fun stuff in there. And it's very orky themed, which is interesting, because Orktober, so why not? And then let's see balance changes. And I want to make sure I don't miss any jokes in here, because Harry gets upset when I miss his jokes. Okay, as Halloween season kicks off, it's time to let the Xenos, and especially the Orcs, take center stage. Get ready this Halloween season for a wide range of seasonal Orc buffs, a trait buff, and 2 Warlord buffs. So let's get stuck in. And I've seen these, I'm excited about them, but let's leave the surprise. First off, in Orcs, we have Ed Zappa. Let's go ahead and zoom in a bit. Ed Zappa, the only psionic blaster. Ed Zappa has a lot of potential for good play, but doesn't quite fit in a lot of decks. to get the value outside of perhaps Dagstruck. Now, I use him a lot in Snickrod decks. By increasing his cost a bit, we've made him considerably more bulky, giving him a good bump in damage output, which should make him much more viable for a bit more cost, and see more use than the others than a secondary tech piece. So yeah, in Orcs you see a ton of double Medicae. You don't see this guy as much. You see him in Snickrot. You don't see him as much in most other decks. The plus 10 base Psychic means he hits dramatically harder, which is really good because he was a little bit didn't hit very hard for what he brought. But also the plus 40 wounds is really significant. So he's a pretty dramatic buff to the Weird Boy, and I think that is going to make him a lot better. In the campaigns, I've already seen him take a lot longer to chew through. And it's a max level campaign, but still, he's got over 200 hit points at that point, which is good. Haxor, which is funny, we're avoiding the double Medicae, and then this guy immediately as a second Medicae gets cheaper. Medicae is quite a premium resource for the Orcs, is it? And with a number of the Warlord mechanics relying on wounds totals, either directly or through attrition, it seems a bit harsh to keep that tool at a significantly higher bar than other factions. A small change, but with the range of Orc options, it could make a meaningful difference. And to go ahead and spoil it, there's also a free Orc card login reward this week that's, I believe, a 5-point Medicae, somewhere in there. So with that, it becomes totally reasonable to run triple Medicae decks, which is a lot of hit points. Big nod to Supreme Commander Gazgul, but also really good for the white one, the one who was from Mozrog. Next up, Bullet Boys, Scrapjet. I believe this actually got a recent nerf, but here's another one. Plus 10 wounds, plus 20 base melee. Whew. I actually missed that last time I read through this. On theme, we're getting into the buggies. As the melee buggy, the Scrapjet often got sidelined, so a significant melee increase with a bit more wounds should make both his Furious Charge and all-around utility much more appealing. Yeah. So a buff to both wounds and melee makes him a really strong piece, both in the same two decks. So this is a really strong 1-2 punch here for Supreme Commander Gosar, or Supreme Commander Gazgul. Too many GHs. And Mozrog. It's pretty cool. Oof! And I will say, I still have some trauma from when I played back in the day when this thing was just like completely ran the table, and it still is a very scary card, but it's been nerfed quite a bit since its heyday. So seeing the Squig Buggy, the Barrage Truck get -5 cost, it's good. I'm actually running it a lot less often these days because it's been so expensive, so this is definitely meaningful, and I assume that held up in the stats. So a more notorious Buggy, the Squig Buggy was hit pretty heavily with nerfs in the Badrek heyday, there it is. So it's long overdue to revert that nerf and let the most chaotic of the buggies out of the mech workshop. I am a little concerned about that because that card is already really good. But yeah, it wasn't seeing much use, and even I didn't use it as much, so yeah, it's worth it. Bad Rakshas Smasha Gun. This one, the Grot Guns don't lack for damage, but are often glass cannons, yeah. And they're cheap, so that's not terrible. Although the mechs haven't made a glass cannon yet, they might be writing it down now. Before that inevitable disaster, we were bulking up the Smasher Gun a bit to make something a bit more substantial in the Orky line. Like, we were bulking up the Smasher Gun to be made of something a bit more substantial and Orky, like scrap. Sure. And this one often was beat out because if I'm running the cheaper mech guns, the little cheap ones, I'll almost always go for the Barrage one. So having this one be a little bit more tempting with the extra wounds, that's nice. I appreciate that. And that's a way for it to stand out a bit without changing the trait and making it compete directly with the other stuff. Ooh, here's some fun ones. Goldaka, one of the earliest big cards for Orcs. Mecha Dread has never found a consistent home because it costs a fortune. While the shield and BGH is potentially a potent combo, it never felt like it justified the cost. So we're supercharging both its weapons for maximum crumpin'. Yeah, so plus 15 base to both range and melee, that makes that thing significantly scarier, which is really good because it was definitely not great. Especially being heavily melee themed. It's got a ton of hit points and shields, which is great. Big Game Hunter also really good, but as they say here, it's pretty much always beat out by other cards, and not having Barrage with so many really strong Barrage pieces in that price range or just slightly higher, it's really hard to justify taking this. But with that buff, we'll see. I'll definitely be taking another look myself. Doug Giga Blaster. This seems just fine, but pretty much everyone's is low level, so it's hard to say. A lot of the buffs we're seeing as super heavies are really hard to interpret because you only really see them at max level. And I don't really know. Like, this seems fine at max level, but it's probably not enough to compete with things like, it doesn't even compete terribly well with the Gorkanaut or the Morkanaut, the yellow one. So seeing it get a little love is probably good. Talking big cards, Giga Blasta doesn't quite match up point for point with a number of other faction Lord of Wars. And as we've seen with some other price drops or other factions Lord of Wars, we're doing the same here. So it's kind of a parity upgrade, but I do think it does make sense in this case. Snicked. Oh, look, another Medicae getting cheaper. So that's a net 3 cost reduction in 2 of those Medicae plus the cheap one. So you can really reasonably run triple Medicae in Orcs now. Snick Stitch, Snakebite Clan Pain Boss. On the same point as Haxor, we're doing more to make the Orc Medicae cards a bit more appealing. While the Pain Boss is the more expensive of the 2 mid-range Medicaes, stat for stat, they're pretty identical. So we're closing the points gap slightly and making him a more prominent damage dealer to differentiate. He also does, I believe he only has melee. If he has ranged, it's very minimal. So that's one of the considerations when I don't take him, is that he doesn't have as much flexibility necessarily. But I might be mixing him up because mine is also low level. But still, that's a very tempting triple Medicae, and all of this makes Mozrog a little more competitive. I always feel like Mozrog is really strong, but he doesn't really compete that well for me in the ladder. So I appreciate seeing that. That's nice. Warboss Gordurang, Goth Clan Warboss and Mega Armor. Plus 10 range, plus 10 melee. Very nice. A newer Orc card which is missing a bit of punch because it has anti-infantry instead of the other traits. And a Warboss can't go around, spoilers, can't go around without being dead killy. So his significant attack increases and an upcoming change below should sort that right out. Moving on to the wider card pool, we've got a couple changes to most other factions, most notably some big buffs for Space Marine Primarchs, and a buff to anti-infantry. Anti-infantry is a funny trait. It's one that's come up quite a bit as it feels lackluster, which sucks because it's actually very strong. It's a stronger version of Big Game Hunter, but it doesn't feel strong, and that gives everyone kind of a negative sentiment, and every single card that gained anti-infantry has seen a pretty dramatic drop in play. Trading like Furious Charge for anti-infantry feels like a flat nerf, even where anti-infantry is a pretty significant damage buff. But it does do a lot, and now it's going to be really good. It goes from these level 1 through 4 damage buffs to doing this. So it actually now, instead of being on par with Big Game Hunter, is actually better, like significantly better. Now anti-infantry cards are going to hit really hard against infantry at max level, doing outright double damage, which is solid. Anti-infantry has had a lukewarm reception throughout its recent history, so pumping up those numbers should make it feel much more impactful. The main and fair criticism is that compared to BGH, Big Game Hunter, when targeting a 40-plus point card, it's going to have a good amount of wounds to get through, and almost certainly a target you want to take down. And while there are far more infantry cards, often they're low priority targets or would be removed in 1 to 2 turns anyway. So this damage increase should hopefully create 1 turn removals of the lower cards much more consistently, which was the goal in the first place, and to be particularly viable on mid-cost cards, which are able to clear lanes as effectively as bigger cards when facing the right target. And a lot of this is about deployment order and kind of the tool for the job, right? I've said before that a lot of the most common infantry, or the most common taunt cards, the most common shielded cards, things that you really need to punch through that can stick around longer than they should, anti-infantry counters them. So in some ways, it's a very strong utility trait, but that lukewarm reception matters. If people aren't running it because they don't like it, then you need to buff it to the point where it's a no-brainer. This may be a little bit too much of a buff, but we'll see how the math works out. But I do think it is a strong trait. I think it is strongest as a one of 2 traits. So the card has a secondary trait to back up on, but has anti-infantry as well. But there's definitely something to be said for your cheaper cards that have anti-infantry, especially since the majority of warlords in the game are infantry. And so if you want to close out a game, saving your anti-infantries to punch through, say, a Tolmeron is actually totally viable. And this is one of those things that could really help you close out a game. So big buff. Watch out for these too. Make sure you don't deploy infantry against anti-infantry cards because it's the way to lose your stuff real fast. Buff to Necrons, just a couple. Stalking Silence, the Big Game Hunter Canoptic Stalker, -2 cost. Well statted to fill a position in the Necron roster, the Stalker was likely asking a bit much for those stats, so it's being brought down in cost. And really the thing here is that stats are basically on par with the other cards right next to it that I personally have at higher levels, so I didn't play this because it didn't compete in any way with what I already had. And I haven't found that much need for Big Game Hunter in the ladder, so this is definitely worth looking at now. But yeah. Then we've got the Implacable Guardian, which really had just garbage stats. It's getting +10 to range, which will make it a little bit more flexible. While well-rounded attack cards are pretty valuable in every faction, Necrons prefer to lean more heavily towards one attack type. True. This left the Sentinel in an awkward spot's first cost, so tipping its damage output more heavily in favor of ranged should help. Which I really like balanced cards in Necrons. The problem is you could do like a half damage with both attack types or double or full damage with one attack type, and that really makes it more justifiable to bring, the one attack type. But flexible attack types are good, especially in Nemesis or Xandrek decks where you can buff both. So yeah, it's good. Like to see it. It's another card I only recently got, so mine is fairly low level. But I'll take another look at it now. Servants of the Emperor. Yeah, these guys needed a buff. Sister Malin, the Zephyrim, the jump pack Sisters of Battle, plus 20 wounds. Woo. Malin has good damage output and utility with her melee scout, but as with a lot of her sisters, is on the more fragile side. Given the Zephyrim are one of the more elite of the orders, giving her a decent chunk more wounds seems fair. Yeah, and similarly, these are both newer cards. For me personally, I don't play them very much because mine are not very high level, so they don't compete correctly with things that they would normally outcompete just because of that level point. But this will still help make them stand out, even if they don't quite catch up in level, and then definitely deserve another look at max level. Sigma Omicron 10110. I'm sure that means something in binary. I actually would love to know. The Skitaria Vanguard gets plus 5 range. While adding more health to cheaper regen cards may seem like a more sensible option, there's a limit to how much that can actually help in that price range. So more effective damage output makes more sense, and additional wounds can easily come by in thematic Mechanicus decks. Sure, yeah. There are some really cool things you can run with pure Mechanicus in a ranged deck, so I appreciate seeing that. It's a nice nod. And I personally really like punchy, cheap regen cards a lot. I'd like to see that. Here's the buff to the Primarchs, and this is an interesting one because they both have really powerful rules. They're really cool, but they themselves, they're very difficult to consistently win with because you end up running thin decks. So it's really important to kind of give them a little bit more. Guilliman needs to be able to finish out more games with either melee or range, which befits the more balanced of the tacticians. And then the Lion needs more time standing on the table so that he can benefit from his defensive warlord trait of your bodyguards punching in front of him to shield him. The plus 50 base wounds really helps with that, and that is a massive buff to anything but a Primarch. Like, that base wounds mean that at higher level, they're going to have a huge wound pool over what he's had before. So this is cool. I like to see this. Both Primarchs sit at the lowest win rate for ranked, and have done so for some time. And while the 200-point games are not their real space to shine, we can see that other Supreme Commanders are having decent success at 200 points. So both are getting significant increases to their base stats. Gilliman's balanced damage output is now incredibly impactful, and the Lion was always quite fragile for a Supreme Commander. Yep. While having a serious increase in wounds also synergizes well with his Warlord rule. Yeah, very true. Love both buffs to that. It feels very appropriate for both of them. The Lion is actually where I've been putting my legendary Space Marine wild cards. Not that that's a good idea, but I just think he's really cool. So I've been doing that. So this is exciting to see. We'll see if he does better this season. Chaos. A couple things here. And these are both cards I was pretty excited about. This one especially because I really want ranged chaos to be a thing. But I'll stop spoilers. Slathox the Urtwist, Felgor Ravager Deathnell. What a name. Cheap fear is always handy, but when you don't do any damage at the same time, the card just becomes a stall piece with a lot of better stalling options. Yeah, the Felgor Deathnell just wasn't doing the job. A good damage increase will help put that right. Yeah, and it gets a damage increase to both ranged and melee, which makes him another flexible piece, which is great. So that makes him significantly better in a mask deck. Or all kinds of options. Very good. I like that. And then, of course, we've got Kraruth, which is one of the new cards I was most excited about and barely ever play. Because in practice, I've still got some levels to get, but then ranged chaos still falls a little bit flat. So right here, chaos range is getting an increased amount of support with balance changes and new releases. And the core to that is having good baseline options to include. Kraruth should now nicely fill that role with a meaningful ranged attack coupled with precision shot. Yes. So any range damage increase to base adds up very, very quickly, and then also a range damage increase plus precision shot gives you a double-ish increase in damage. So that's going to make a big difference in this guy. Also, just a Black Legion, base Legionnaire is just a really cool-looking piece, and the more of those we have, the better. Tyranids, this is a fun one too. So similar to the Primarchs, this is both of the Norn assimilators. We got the Norn Emissary and the Norn Assimilator, both getting dramatic cuts in cost. I believe this is the Psychic one and this is the Shooty one. So Shooty one goes down 4 points, Psychic one goes down 6 points. Woo, man. And if I remember correctly, they both have target acquired, but they are super heavy and both very rare and very expensive. So they cost a lot of points, so you want high level of them when you run them. So I really like to see this because I was really excited about them when I first got them, and now I've just kind of fallen out of favor with them just because they don't fit as well as some of the other more efficient things. So this helps. Similar to the Primarchs, we've got a paired buff here. The Norns are priced as Lords of War, but not quite at that level. Yeah, so they were some of the earlier Lords of War, and they just are not on par power level with the others. So the cost getting cheaper makes sense. Add to that the number of older Lord of Wars getting price drops, and their cost was all the more jarring. They're both getting significantly cheaper to field, and the Assimilator in particular, the Psychic one, should be much easier to slot into decks, which I love it. And that rounds off the season changes. Last one, and next season isn't painted red. Yeah, there you go. Orcs go faster. This again is the cards added to the general card pool, so these are ones where if you have the correct player level to get them, will drop in random packs. So you don't have to get one copy of these before getting the drops. I got this guy almost immediately at the start of the season, and just got this guy in the card shop. Still waiting on this one, we'll see. So we got 3 of the newer Kroot, Shooty, the new Krutox. I love seeing more Krutoxes, and especially a heavy melee focused one. And this is one of those balance cards I'm excited to get, because if I remember correctly, he's got a bunch of hit points. Then for servants, we got some of the new custodians. Some of the custodians added with Golden Boy Supreme Commander. I don't remember his name. I should remember his name. I don't, but I'm sure you're yelling at your screen now. And then Orcs, Gazgul Thraka can now drop in random drops. Ooh, I love seeing Supreme Commanders added to the random card pool because that means more players are going to get them, which is very exciting. And then more players are going to play them, which just makes for more varied matches in the ladder and just a good time. I like it. I got this guy too in some drops as well, so I'm really already seeing these pretty quickly. I love to see this. Oh man, what a gut punch. I just worked so hard to get this guy because he never drops and now he's in the card pool. Oh well. I'm ahead of the game because I got a couple copies of him. But okay, and then these guys, the Night Lords that came together in a specific pack, are super good. Yeah, they're terrific stats, really nice flexible pieces to add to Chaos. So I'm really excited to see them in the general pool because I don't think I have any of them yet. So, yes. And then Leagues of Votann, we got Akit the Fierce. This guy right here. Very nice. Very nice. Love it. All right, so we're going to take another look at some of the other announcements around the current events to make sure I didn't miss any. And then we'll go on from there. All right, server error. Great. So this is talking just a little bit about more the Halloween event with this nice, lovely graphic here with this very disgusting-looking Nurgle skull. 3 campaigns, we talked about that. Unexpected reinforcements, we talked about that too. And the special victory chests, which we already talked about that as well. Here are the dates. This runs from October 28th through November 4th. So we've got it through the end of the week. I believe that goes into Sunday. Yes? Yes, should. Next. Halloween challenge. Now there are some things here too. So this is still up in the Reddit right now. Should go on through tomorrow. Doesn't say when on October 30th. Is it the 30th now, or is it? I can't tell what date it is. Yes, it's the 29th. So, yeah, so we have 2 days on this one. No, we don't. It's tomorrow. Anyway. But yeah, so there's a riddle here. You probably know it if you don't read the other comments, and go ahead and drop in there. And that should be an easy way to, get in there. Next, there is an actual contest for seeing who can put up the most fearsome chaotic deck. And this is kind of fun. So jump on the Discord if you want to compete in this to make your Halloween-themed deck. I love thematic decks, and it's one of the things that you can do in Warhammer Combat Cards a little bit more effectively than you can do in the tabletop. So it's cool to have this both as a way to really enjoy Warhammer 40k, but also really flex that what if and get very into the spooky season. So there we go. And I think that's it. Yeah, we'll touch on this thing that I also talked about recently. So the shop has been changed. So in the card shop, you're now going to find fewer tabs, which is great because those were pretty overwhelming, especially on the phone. Now you're going to see going down to 4. So let's see. We're excited to share some upcoming updates to the shop as the next step in our ongoing efforts to make cards more accessible to all players. Following the recent introductions of hero packs and wild cards, we know that the current shop setup can sometimes feel overwhelming with too many tabs and a wide range of offers that can make finding what you need a challenge. Yeah. You've probably seen in some of my videos flipping around between tabs trying to find where something is. It's pretty clear that even experienced players get confused by it, so I appreciate the change. Although now, instead of horizontal scrolling, there is vertical scrolling. So I can't say it's fixed everything, but it has been more I have found it easier to navigate since the changes than it was before. So good, I like it. To address this, we're making some changes to simplify and improve your experience. One key update is that when you max out a card, you'll now receive plasma instead of coins. Nice. Which we hope will provide more flexibility in how you use your rewards. We're confident that these adjustments will make it easier and more enjoyable for you to navigate the shop and find what you're looking for. These updates will be rolling out over the coming weeks with some changes entering the shop as soon as possible. With that said, let's dive into some of these changes. Simplifying the shop. Reducing number of tabs to cut down on clutter, help you find what you're looking for without unnecessary hassle. We're also narrowing down the number of offers available at any given moment. Also nice. So there's a little bit less vertical scrolling. For example, combat patrols and battle force boxes won't always be available, but will often be tied to specific campaigns that match their factions, giving you a clearer idea of when they'll appear. Nice. Additionally, some of these offers will rotate into the shop outside of campaigns, so you'll still have chances to pick up packs for your favorite factions as they cycle through. Also nice. We're also adjusting the size and price of these packs. Combat patrols will be smaller and more affordable, while battle force boxes will stay the same price, but offer larger bundles, I think. It says we'll offer larger bundles. I read that to mean same price. New approaches to shop content. We're also replacing coins in many offers with additional plasma, cards, and wild cards, to make the contents more valuable and satisfying. Nice. We're making adjustments to how offers are priced and the discounts available to ensure they're more appealing across different price points, giving you a better value for your purchases. Cool. Campaign pack improvements. We're also making some tweaks to campaign packs. Going forward, these packs will offer more general benefits to the campaign's faction, not just cards tied directly to the current campaign's mission keyword. Cool. Additionally, we're excited to bring back specific guaranteed warlords in campaign starter packs, which many of you probably remember. I took a screenshot of this the first time I saw it, and I was super pumped because it was 500 plasma for a guaranteed copy of the Swarmlord, and then a bunch of extra cards. When I was starting out, that was how I got extra warlords, was I would always make sure I had 500 plasma on hand, and then anytime a new warlord I didn't have popped in the shop, boom, pick that up for the 500 plasma. That's how I get copies of Etok, that's how I get copies of Uthar the Destined, and that's how I got my Swarmlord to nearly max. So really appreciate that. It's one of my favorite ways to spend plasma, and was very exciting to get that. So it's cool to see those back, because there was a while where they stopped doing that. And it used to be whenever a new warlord was added to the game, they were always available, at level 1 was always available for 500 plasma in the shop. And that was one of my favorite ways to level up early on, and I have missed that for some time. So this is cool. These changes are about improving your experience, and we're eager to hear your thoughts on the updates go live. Your feedback is what drives the improvements. We'll keep adjusting these to ensure they work best for you. We hope these changes make your experience smoother and more enjoyable. I'm a total fanboy, so I'm very happy with all of these, and I hope I've talked about that already, so very exciting. Although, hilariously, these changes come immediately after I did a video covering basically all of this about the in-game economy and some of the pros and cons to it, and some of that is now invalidated, but in a good way. Happy about that. Let's see if I got it. I did not get it, so back on the Battle Pass rewards, but I did want to highlight something where there's a player in the Reddit who posted a comment where as they're leveling up, they got a notification that the wild card drop rate has increased with part of their level. So that's another kind of hidden change that wasn't mentioned in this, but if you're a higher level player, you should have noticed with the start of this season that the drop rate for wild cards has gotten much higher. I immediately noticed it and was like, something going on? And then it wasn't until this morning when I saw that Reddit post that I really realized what was going on. I was like, sneaky, okay. But really excited about that because honestly, the wild card drop rate felt a little bit low for how impactful it is and how rare it is to get, epic and legendary wild cards, which understandably, right? Those are supposed to be hard to get, but they were maybe a little bit too hard to get. So all good changes. Very excited about this. Hopefully having fun, and see you out there. Now, I do want to close with a couple notes on this campaign. So we talked about the Play on Tabletop campaign, which is extremely challenging. I will say a couple things that have really worked well for me. Somebody mentioned Logan Grimnar, the Space Wolf chapter master, really strong for clearing some of these, especially the Glogothrox deck, where you have to clear a lot of cards very quickly. Very effective. And then I also have just threw it to the winds, which is what the heck, I'm doing it. And I'm running Belisarius Call with some of the most durable range cards you can run, and that is what I use to just get past Snickrot. Now, I'm still pretty far back. I'm getting my butt kicked. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been very challenging, and getting through it has been quite satisfying. So Canoness was a good one for the extra attacks. Logan was really good to help clear decks where you're having trouble clearing through multiple cards. And then I think that the call deck, the Supreme Commander call deck, is going to get me pretty dramatically through there. But there's definitely room for, because the campaign right now you can play as a mix of Space Marines and Servants of the Emperor, there's definitely room for a, what's his name? Non-Supreme Commander, not call, whoever it is. Magos. The lower Magos, the cheaper Servants of the Emperor Warlords. He's very, very good right now, and if you get your Trick or Treat cards, they will always have a benefit to you no matter what. So you get extra healing for your cards on the board, regardless of whether they're Tricks or Treats, which is, there's something there, especially for how cheap you can be and how many Warlords you can shove in there. Warlords that have not been effective, the Lion, didn't work well. I did run Azrael to get past the... It's actually, I think, how I beat the Glogothrox deck, was with Azrael, because my cards were getting stronger as they were getting debuffed, which is a really effective way to get through that. That was helpful to make sure that my end game was very strong. That did not work against Snickrot, but yeah, it was good. So try things out, experiment a lot, save some plasma for resets. The reward at the end of that campaign is really good. I don't know if I'm going to get there, but I believe it's 2 copies of the newly buffed... And I'm going to jump in here. Bear with me for a second. I believe it is 2 copies of the newly buffed Orc Tank. Play on tabletop. No, it is not this newly buffed Orc Tank, but it is 4 ranks of Iota. The Calexis Assassin with Psionic Blast, really good. That'll give me almost level 10 with him. Bunch of card backs, bunch of gold, and then you get a copy of Storm's Wrath, which is the Taunt Barrage Imperial Guard Supreme or Super Heavy Tank. Really weird piece, very fun piece to play with. Definitely worth working for if you can get there. Again, very challenging campaign. At the time I'm going to post this video, we're looking at only a few hours left. Hopefully I can help a couple players, but we'll see. If you're already going that far, you probably already beat it. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Appreciate the time. Until next time.